Hey, welcome back to the Conservative Cat Show, where the truth has claws, liberty has a roar, and political cowards, they get dragged out from they're dragged out from underneath their nearest airport terminal. And that brings me to today's story. Texas Democrats, they fled to Chicago. So they got on a plane and they fled to Chicago. They've done this before. If you are having a little bit of deja vu, yes, they've done this before. We'll talk about it. They're trying to block the Texas GOP from redistricting. So they called a special session, and they're also supposed to be, addressing the flood victims, providing aid to the flood victims. It's an emergency session. But they left these flood victims behind, and they went to Chicago. Whoa! Microphone. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and support the show by purchasing a bottle of Patriot Pump today. Go to patriotpumpenergy.com. Use promo code ConservativeCat. It is the best promo code out there. You get $10 off. So be sure to buy your supplement today. It's a great supplement, no artificial colors. It keeps you focused all day long. It's got that black pepper extract. I swear by it. It's good stuff, folks. So it's a premium pre-workout. Go buy it at patriotpumpenergy.com. We've got a few things that I want to get to today. Joe Biden, his green energy scam is getting crushed. Okay, so these farmers have defeated, with the help of President Donald Trump, of course, the Grain Belt land grab. So Grain Belt Energy, or a Grain Belt Express. This was a windmill transmission line that was going from Kansas to Illinois. So we'll be talking about that because this fell through. So we'll get to that. But a little fun story. Trump finally reveals his thoughts on Sydney Sweeney, that whole controversy. And he was asked about Sydney Sweeney and about her being a registered Republican. So we're going to get to Donald Trump and his comments about the whole Sydney Sweeney controversy as well. But I opened today's show talking about political cowards or politicians, cowards who really need to be drug out from underneath their nearest airport terminal. I'm your host, Conservative Cat. Let's talk about it. We're taking aim at some good old-fashioned Texas-sized cowardice. Okay, so that's all I can really say about these people is that they're just complete and utter cowards. They're cowards who aren't in Texas anymore, but they are sipping their oat milk lattes in Chicago, and they are pretending to be heroes of democracy and democracy. So they fled to Chicago to preserve democracy or whatever the hell. So this is a story how Texas Democrats ran away again, okay, to block a Republican redistricting bill, which is really funny because they did this again, like already. Okay, they did this during COVID, and I'll talk about it coming up here. But they grabbed their carry-ons, they got their Instagram filters out, and of course, they took their misplaced sense of moral superiority, and they ran into the city that invented corruption, Chicago. So buckle up, folks. This one has everything in it, this story. And we've got gerrymandering, race baiting, as always, flood victims used as pawns, and of course, Governor J.B. Pritzker. There's a cameo appearance by him in this story. So King J.B. makes an appearance in this story. So stick around. Let's start out with the facts. Over the weekend, Texas House Democrats, they fled from Austin, Texas to Chicago. Why? Because they wanted to break quorum to prevent a vote on the redistricting bill that, brace yourselves, would give Republicans 5 seats in Texas with the Texas congressional map. Okay. So really the way I look at this, more seats for people who got the most votes statewide. Okay. So Republicans are very popular in Texas. They've gotten more popular over the years, and it makes sense that we reevaluate our redistricting. They're supposed to do that every so often. So see, in Texas, you need 100 members, House members, state House members, to present a vote, okay? Or you need them to be present to vote, these 100 members of the state House, okay? Republicans hold 88 seats, Democrats hold 64. So if more than 33 Democrats just vanish, vanish like Hunter Biden's laptop, or, vanish like ethics at a Hunter Biden deposition, the whole House grinds to a halt. So if these Democrats just vanish, then the whole House and what they're supposed to be doing, it grinds to a halt and it grinds to a stop, and that it did. So this isn't the first time, like I said, that they've pulled a political stunt like this. Smash that like button or throw it in the comments section if you remember what happened in 2020 or 2021 about. So they did this. They fled to Washington, D.C. Okay, remember this? To block the election integrity reforms. There were election integrity reforms. I think it was something like voter ID laws, things like that they were voting on. And the Democrats got into their little plane and then they hopped onto a private jet. I think it was a private jet that they were on, and they wound up catching COVID. Like all of them got on this private jet and they were posting maskless selfies, and a lot of them wound up catching COVID. And they kind of became a national punchline. They were a joke, right? These Texas Democrats who fled the state of Texas on a private jet to stop a vote on election integrity specifically. I think it was like voter ID or something like that they were voting on. This time it's Chicago. It's not Washington, D.C., but nothing screams defender of democracy than taking orders from Governor J.B. Pritzker, the Governor Cheesecake himself, J.B., right? I love how these people are like, we're going to be defenders of democracy, but we're fleeing to Chicago and we're going to take marching orders from a guy who is a known tyrant and whom the most, I would say, Illinois residents despise. So redistricting, is it representation or is it rigged? Now let's talk about the redistricting in Texas. Every 10 years, the states redraw their legislative maps. Okay, they do this on a regular basis. Texas, obviously getting more red. There are major population shifts that they have to accommodate for. So there's a lot of population shifts, specifically in the suburban areas where conservatives have been surging, despite what the left might tell you. These suburban areas are actually booming with conservatives. There's rural areas that are booming with conservatives, but the suburban areas are starting to boom with conservatives. There is a massive shift going on. Like I said, the Democrats, they have like a 19%, congressional Democrats have a 19% approval rating. So yeah, there's a shift going on. They need to account for that. And plus they redraw the maps every 10 years. So this is nothing like crazy. This new map, according to a report from the Center Square, would likely create 5 new Republican seats and redraw Democrat incumbents out of their comfy little districts, okay? So cue the screams of racism, gerrymandering, and Trump's power grab, okay? They're screaming, oh, this is racist, this is gerrymandering, okay? Even if it was, like, let's look at Illinois, New York, California. They've been doing the exact same thing for decades. Look at Illinois. It is gerrymandered so hard. It was gerrymandered so hard in 2021. They surgically removed Republican districts like a doctor pulling wisdom teeth. They removed Republican districts. I mean, there is a district. It's actually Eric Swarnson's district. It's the Congressional 17th District, which quite literally looks like a middle finger. It loops around like this, or maybe that's the 13th. I don't know. That could be Nikki Budzinski's district. I'd have to pull up the map, but these districts are insanely gerrymandered in Illinois. They are also gerrymandered in New York and California, and they've been doing this for years. But Texas suddenly, oh no, because they want to gerrymander. And I'm not even really saying they're gerrymandering. There is a shift going on, and they have to account for that shift. There's been population swings, conservatives moving to suburban areas. In Texas, people in suburban areas are switching over from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party because guess what? Democrats aren't liked anymore. Okay, they're not the popular party. So suddenly Texas does this, and it's like Jim Crow 2.0. Like, how could you? This is completely and utterly racist, they say, the Democrats. say the map silences Black and Latino voters. Okay, so the race baiting, insert here, Democrats race baiting. And here's the thing, this isn't about race, this is about power. This is about the kind of power Democrats want. They know they can't win fairly, so they have to try to secure their power in other ways. They resort to performative obstruction, really, is what this is called, and tear-jerking press releases, and the Black and Latino voters are being silenced by the redrawing of this map. Like, whatever, I want to get to the flood victims because this affects these flood victims in Texas above all else. Okay, so, they're flying to Chicago to block this vote, the redistricting vote specifically. Now, they were called into special session to focus on the redistricting, but they also were called to provide aid to the flood victims, okay? The Democrats are claiming that they are the only ones prioritizing the flood victims in the Hill Country. 130 people died. Thousands were displaced. And these lawmakers are saying that the redistricting vote is holding disaster relief hostage. Hold on. The redistricting thing, you have to do it every 10 years, first of all. So, this was bound to be a thing. Number one. Number two, you left the state, dude. Okay? My guys, Democrats, you left the state. The House can't pass flood aid because you're not there. Okay? You're the one who left. It's like skipping a funeral and then blaming the family for not hosting the funeral on Zoom. That is literally what the Democrats are doing here. It's such ass-backwards logic. I mean, totally backwards logic. It could be like a Biden press briefing, okay? Completely backward logic. They're blaming Republicans, and they're saying they're the ones who are holding the disaster relief hostage by hosting a special session that also happens to take a look at redistricting. Governor Abbott did not use the tragedy of the flood as political cover, as the Democrats are claiming. They say that, this tragedy of the flood is being used as a stage prop. No, it just so happens that we have to call a special session for redistricting, and we should probably address this little thing that killed 130 people and displaced thousands. We should address that as lawmakers, okay? So really what the Democrats are doing, they're using this as a stage prop because they're out there in Chicago now and they've left, okay? So they can't really pass flood aid anymore, but they're saying that they left because of the redistricting, and then they point a finger at Republicans because how dare they host a special session that covers two topics. So people are grieving, people are suffering. They need to get back and do their jobs, do the jobs we elected them to do. And they need to stop filming their TikToks from the airport, from the Chicago airport, like it's a little college trip, okay? Like it's a field trip. And they're filming themselves on TikTok, okay? They need to stop that, and they need to go back and do their actual jobs. It's disgraceful, but it's also typical. They did this back in 2021. So let's talk about the Chicago connection here, because State Representative Jean Wu, Christina Morales, James Tallarico, they all flew up north and posted videos themselves bravely, walking through airports. Oh, we're in Chicago and we left Texas, so that way we didn't have to vote on the gerrymandered maps, right? Tallarico, James Tallarico, he posted, quote, "Trump is trying to rig the midterms, but first he'll have to come through us." I swear, these Texas Democrats in general, Trump lives in their heads rent-free. Okay, Trump really has nothing to do with this. I mean, it happens every 10 years where they redraw the maps. And because Texas has decided to play ball a red state, whereas, you've had California, Illinois, and New York redistricting and gerrymandering for decades, they decided to say, hey, you know what? Let's fight fire with fire and let's do this thing. Texas did it. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's got their panties in a bunch, including House Speaker Dustin Burrows. Okay. Not House Speaker. So everybody's got their panties in a bunch, but House Speaker Dustin Burrows, he's a good guy. He's a Republican. Okay. He said that the House is going to meet today. It was, 3 p.m. Today at 3 p.m. And if no quorum is present, they're going to go ahead and go forward. All options are on the table. Okay. That includes arresting the runaway lawmakers, a power that the Texas Supreme Court has affirmed, essentially. So we could see these people cuffed, brought back to go vote. I know that sounds extreme, but this is necessary because these lawmakers can't flee every freaking time they have a disagreement or every time they know they're going to lose a vote. Okay. Otherwise, our legislative process dies. And if they were truly defenders of democracy, they would participate in debate and they would lose with grace. Okay. It's not democracy to leave and to flee like a little bitch every single time you don't get your way. Okay. That's a toddler temper tantrum. That's not democracy. That's not you being a House representative. So, Dustin Burrows, he's not happy. He's also got his panties in a bunch. He's very upset, and he's said all options are on the table. And I think that means that they're possibly going to arrest these runaway lawmakers. I know it sounds extreme. It's not. We're actually defending democracy. They have to be arrested, in my opinion, and brought back because we have to preserve democracy in the legislative process. We have to make sure our lawmakers know that they need to win with grace and also lose with grace when it comes to votes. Okay, so let's zoom out. Is this about just the maps? No, it's about the flood relief, like I said. And it's not just about these two things. It's about truth and order. Okay, so Romans 13, and you might think that, Kat, you're being really mean, wanting to arrest lawmakers like that. Actually, it's biblical. Okay, what I'm talking about is biblical. So Romans 13 calls us to respect lawful authority. These lawmakers took an oath to serve their districts, okay, not to film TikToks and go on vacation to Chicago, and not to sabotage the very institution that they're paid, by the way, to uphold. They are paid to uphold this institution. They're not doing their jobs. Breaking quorum is a form of lying, okay, and it pretends to be righteous, but really it's just rooted in rebellion. And Scripture warns us to not pervert justice with showing partiality, okay? And that's really what they're doing. They are taking the side of an issue. They don't want to lose on this issue, the redistricting issue. And that's not true justice, and that's the perversion of justice because they're showing partiality. And these Democrats, what they're doing, they're just trying to protect their power, and they're not representing the people. Okay, so Romans 13 is very clear about how we're called to respect authority. These people are participating in a rebellion, and breaking quorum is a form of lying. So if you don't like the map, there are legal pathways, legal channels to do this, to contest the map, right? You can take it to court. You can take it to the voters. You can actually get the voters to pass a referendum to redistrict or to reevaluate the redistricting, okay? Don't take it to O'Hare International Airport, okay? There are legal channels, legal pathways. You don't have to flee every time you don't get your way. All right, so now let's talk about Illinois. Why did the Texas Democrats flee to Illinois specifically? Well, Democrats fled Texas for Illinois because this is the state that is the most aggressive, and I would say very racially questionable gerrymandering in the country. Okay, and I say racially, they carve out Black communities, and like I said, I've never seen this down south, where you have people who are actually segregated based on their neighborhood. Like, this is a Black neighborhood, this is a Chinese neighborhood, this is a Mexican neighborhood, this is in Joliet. I think like the east side of Joliet is notoriously it's known for being a Mexican neighborhood or a Mexican hood. Okay, so this is just the realities of living in a blue state. There's segregation. And what they do is they craft these districts to include urban areas or specific racial demographics in order to help the Democrats keep their stronghold in the state. Okay. So I think we have like 3 Republican congressional seats total out of like 17, and then there's 14 Democrat ones. This is the most aggressive, most gerrymandered map probably in the country, the state of Illinois. Okay. And the Democrats love the Illinois map because it's gerrymandered in their favor. So in 2021, Governor J.B. Pritzker, he signed a map that was so rigged, it probably made CNN wins. Okay, this is one of the most gerrymandered maps I think that I've ever laid eyes on. CNN probably winced while looking at it. The map carved up communities like a Thanksgiving turkey, splitting up rural voters, consolidating urban liberals, and erasing Republican strongholds altogether. Look, the farmer should not have to share a district with some banker, some yuppie real estate agent in Chicago. Okay, they have very different interests, and there's no reason why you should have the same congressman. It should be really like a grid. We shouldn't be carving up the map like it's a Thanksgiving turkey. It should be a grid, and your congressman shouldn't have to travel 3 hours across the state to represent one person in Chicago and another person in downstate Illinois, Effingham. Okay, that's not the way the map should be drawn. You should be representing people of the same like area, demographic, geographically. You should be it makes it easier. And urban liberal has nothing in common with the rural voter. Okay. So now he's meeting Governor JB after him signing this very, very carved up map in 2021. He's meeting with the Texas Democrats, really treating them like exiled prophets. Okay, what a joke. Illinois Democrats are no champions of democracy. They are masters of corruption, and the Texas Democrats are probably coming up here for a crash course on Chicago-style politics. So may Lord help them if they think that this is the moral high ground that they should be taking. You definitely shouldn't be taking advice from Governor J.B. Pritzker and Illinois Democrats. Okay, so I want to wrap this segment up, but we are going to be talking about a few other things this morning. Sydney Sweeney, that whole controversy, Donald Trump commented on that. We're going to get to that at some point today. But when you elect someone to represent you, and I want to be clear about this, you expect them to show up, right? That is like the bare minimum requirement, to show up, do their jobs, even respect the process when it doesn't go their way and when they lose. Okay, you don't get to be a sore loser. And today's Democrats, they are not losing gracefully. They flee, they film it, and then they fundraise off of it. And they say they're fighting for democracy, but really they're fighting to escape it. You see, because democracy didn't give them the result that they wanted. And that's why they're fleeing it. They don't like democracy and they want it their way. And the last time I checked, that was tyranny. So let's pray for the country, pray for Texas, pray for the flood victims above all else, because they are being used as a pawn here, okay, in this grotesque game of political theater. Those lawmakers need to do their job and not only vote on the maps, okay, and lose with grace, but also vote on the aid that the flood victims so desperately need. So let's remember, truth isn't afraid to vote, okay? Courage doesn't run to Chicago. Liberty never hides at an airport, okay? So if they were courageous people, they would stay, stick it out, and even if they lost, they'd do it in a graceful way. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but we are going to be talking about the Grain Belt Express. The Trump administration pulled the plug, a $4.9 billion plug on this green energy transmission line. So we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, you're listening to the Conservative Cat clips. This is the place where we don't call 911 first. Nope, we pray, we prepare, and yes, we pack heat. Every time there's a tragedy, the media and the Democrats, they start crying, do something, do something, and do something. And what they mean is more laws, more bans, and more restrictions, not on criminals, mind you, but on law-abiding citizen. So let me tell you what evil doesn't care about. They don't care about legislation. The man willing to break the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder, doesn't blink twice at your AR-15 ban. Okay, he doesn't read your gun-free zone signs. He sees those signs and he says, this is an invitation for me. Gun control doesn't stop evil. It disarms good people. The founding fathers didn't give us the Second Amendment so we could go hunting. They gave us the Second Amendment to protect ourselves against tyrants, both foreign and domestic. And newsflash, tyrants don't tend to announce themselves. They come wearing smiles and waving around fancy policies. And I also want to talk about self-defense today. Self-defense. The average police response time in big cities like Chicago could be up to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. I know the Chicago PD is really struggling with that. Response times in rural areas, it could get up to even 30 minutes response time. So if somebody kicks down your door, are you going to ask them to wait until the government sends backup to protect you, or are you going to protect your family and take matters into your own hands? So grandma, in Peoria, Illinois, she is just trying to defend her property, but yet she's the one treated like a criminal. She has to go through all kinds of crazy background checks, permits, training. And the thug in Chicago, he gets the gun out of his trunk in an alley, and he didn't think twice about our laws, okay? It's about power. It always has been. Every dictatorship in history has disarmed their citizens first. First, that's Stalin, that's Hitler, that's Mao. They didn't want competition. And once the guns were gone, so were the rights, the freedom, and the people. So a disarmed people is a controlled people. But an armed, faithful, and free people, that is a nightmare for tyrants. And really, it's a blessing to your neighbors if you are armed. The Second Amendment isn't outdated. It's eternal. And just like evil, just like our right, just like the evil has the right to do evil things, and that they will, we have the right to resist evil and to arm ourselves. And the Second Amendment is pretty dang clear, shall not be infringed. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, good morning. This is Conservative Cat. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the subscribe button and follow me on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. I'm on all the social medias, and head on over to patriotpumpenergy.com. Right behind me on the shelf, you'll see it, the bottle of Patriot Pump. It's a premium pre-workout. Use promo code ConservativeCat at checkout. It's $10 off. Best promo code out there. This is a superior supplement. I'm telling you, it's good stuff. No artificial colorings. Now let's talk about the Trump administration, because they just pulled the plug on this $4.9 billion boondoggle, green energy transmission line called the Grain Belt Express. So this would have carved right into the heartland of the Midwest, from Kansas to Illinois, okay? And it would have carved up the best farmland God has ever created, okay? God ever made, right here in the Midwest. And on top of that, you're trampling all over private property rights with eminent domain, and we are serving up, if this were to have gone through, which I think they're still trying to, like, this is a private company, which we're going to get into in just a second. Private companies and eminent domain, like, that shouldn't even be a thing. But they're like, if they're deemed a public utility, they can use eminent domain, which is just wild to me. But so they are serving up a big bowl of taxpayer funded nonsense to Wall Street investors, to global green investors and cronies. That's what they wanted with this, Governor J.B. Pritzker and Joe Biden. This was a Joe Biden initiative. It was the Grain Belt Express. Write that down with a green crayon. But the people have pushed back on this. Farmers, landowners, state lawmakers, they have fought tooth and nail over this issue, and they ultimately won. So you want a story about grassroots America standing up to federal overreach? This is it. This is your story. So let's get into it. This was an 800-mile high voltage transmission line to carry wind power from Kansas through Missouri to Illinois to the East Coast. Okay. Huge. That's what the Grain Belt Express was. And I know what you're thinking. Well, that kind of sounds nice. I'm sure it sounded nice in this press release. Renewable energy, lower emissions, climate change, all the buzzwords, right? But this was just corporate virtue signaling, the best corporate virtue signaling that money could buy, those buzzwords. And what is it really? It is a pipeline of government cash and eminent domain abuse. It's a land grab. They masked as green progress. It's really just a land grab where they want to take things via eminent domain for something that really doesn't work. Wind, okay, which accounts for like a very small percentage of what our grid, what the grid is. Okay, here in the state of Illinois, you can actually look it up in real time. Like wind energy is nothing in comparison to nuclear. A lot of it is nuclear, but definitely coal. That stuff is far superior and produces far more energy than wind or solar ever could. And if you think about it, yeah, if the wind stops, it's not going to produce energy. If the sun's not out, it's not going to produce energy. Anyway, so they were going to build this transmission line right through private farms and homes, whether families wanted it or not, through eminent domain. So the Energy Department, the Department of Energy, was on board with this. The Illinois Commerce Commission rubber stamped it, and Governor J.B. Pritzker, well, of course, he drooled all over the environmental lobbyist paperwork probably. And these people who live on the land actually live on this land and live in this Midwest area from Kansas all the way to Illinois. They did not want this. They said no. Okay, so all of the bureaucrats, your commissions, your departments, your politicians, JB, they were drooling all over this, rubber stamped it, but the people who actually live in this area said, we really don't want it. So let's talk about eminent domain. That's when the government, or now I guess private companies, granted public utility status, they can legally seize your land if they deem it for public good. Okay. Now, like I said, there is no true benefit to wind power. You can look it up in real time. There's it's probably accounts for 3% of our energy or 3% of the grid, or the energy that the grid produces. Nuclear is a big one here in the state of Illinois. That's really what's keeping the lights on. And of course, coal. But what happens when public good means private profit? Because that's really what this means. Here's where the scam gets exposed. The Grain Belt Express is not a public utility by original law. Okay, not according by Illinois' original law. And that's the thing about Illinois is break a law, change the law. Okay, if the law doesn't fit, we just change it. And that's exactly what the General Assembly did in 2018 when the courts ruled, hey, this isn't a public utility. It doesn't meet the definition of a public utility. The courts killed the Grain Belt Express. But get this, fast forward to 2021, the Illinois General Assembly, run by Democrats and greased by green energy lobbyists, they changed the law in 2021. So that way private developers like Invenergy, okay, Invenergy is the Invenergy, yeah, I'm saying that correctly. That's the private company that has this Grain Belt Express thing. They made it to where they could qualify as a public utility, okay, and use eminent domain. Now, if the rules get in your way here in the state of Illinois, you can just rewrite them. We remember Sharon Chung. I'll never forget this. It's the wildest thing. There was this whole thing in the town of Normal, and after this whole debacle, I realized, yeah, the town of Normal is a completely lost cause. But the citizens, they fought to try to get a question on the ballot. Now, if you live in the town of Normal, this might be review. But the Normalites, they fought to try to get this question on the ballot. And the question was really simple. It was, shall the town be divided up into districts similar to that of Bloomington, okay, which is the neighboring town over? They're in a ward system. Districts rather than an at-large government. So an at-large government, specifically for a town the size of Normal, this is a pretty large town. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense because, folks, you want your representative to live in your area. Okay, Normal's a pretty big town. If your representative isn't living in your neighborhood, then he's not going to know that the street lamp is out, and he's not going to make it a priority because, he has to deal with the street lamp being out every single day. You know what I mean? So that's why the Normalites wanted to divvy up the at-large government into districts so that way they would have representation closer to them. Okay, well, there was a big fight over that, and essentially the town of Normal took the Normalites, the residents, to court, called in a big Michael Madigan attorney, Michael Casper, and they fought the Normalite citizens, the Normalites, and they said essentially, well, the town of Normal is an incorporated town, so it can't be via statute divvied up into districts. Okay, so then what did the Normalites do? They said, okay, well, what are the requirements and what via statute defines an incorporated town? Well, what defines an incorporated town is elected positions, town supervisor, collector, assessor. These are to be elected positions. If you have an at-large government and if you are an incorporated town, you need these positions to be elected. Well, guess what? At the time, they weren't elected, and these were appointed by the mayor. So what did the Normal citizens do? They said, well, since the judge said that we are an incorporated town, we need to get elected representation in these positions. So they collected petitions and ran people for those positions, those offices. Well, they were shut down again by a judge. And they said, some bogus reason, like the judge said, it was like home rule or whatever. They could operate essentially the way they wanted to, which was gay. And then Sharon Chung did something even gayer. Can I use that term? I don't know. I use it like 2012 gay, dumb. She did something really dumb where she introduced a bill to change and carve out the town of Normal and exempt them essentially from the state statute that says that they need those positions to be elected. Okay, so if they were following the rules, like the judge had said, via a home rule or whatever the hell his objection or his reasoning was in court, if they were following the rules, why did Sharon Chung have to turn around and change the rule or redo the law? Okay, it's probably because they were breaking the law, right? That's the way I look at it. Similar to, and I bring this up today, I went on a little tangent there, but this just goes to show you the pattern, and it's not just at the state house level, it's even in your small communities. We see this play out. The Illinois General Assembly, they changed the law in 2021, despite the court saying, hey, they don't meet the definition of public utility. And they said, okay, well, we're going to change the law to make it fit the definition of a public utility. So if the rules don't go your way, just rewrite them. That is the Democrat way. That is the Illinois way. And who's left without a voice? It is the landowners, in this case with the Grain Belt Express. It's the Normal residents who have no representation, no voice. The farmers, in this example, the Grain Belt Express example, they raise your food, they pay taxes, they go to church, and they don't have $10,000 to throw at a Springfield lobbyist. Okay. The town of Normal, they have this working relationship, obviously, with Sharon Chung, and you don't have that kind of relationship with your state representative. You just don't. Okay. You're never going to have the type of relationship that your representative has with the mayor or with the other local officials in their district. Okay. Because that's just the way politicians operate. They're all very, very elbow rubby. If that makes sense. So I want to introduce you to this woman. Her name is Barbara Parker. She testified against Grain Belt Express in Kansas. Why? Because the proposed route, the transmission line, was 150 feet from her front door, which is very, very close. And I like what she said in this public hearing. She's a Kansas resident, by the way, Meade County. And she didn't talk about politics or anything really in her statement. She just talked about the generations within her family who have walked through that front door, her grandfather and father, her daughter Kate. Okay. And that's real life. She didn't go up there, spew ideology. She didn't talk theory or economics. She just, she didn't talk about the climate change or present climate graphs for some DC think tank. No, she just talked about her family. She talked about how her family poured their soul into that land. And, bureaucrats in Washington and in Springfield, they just want to check a box that says net zero, on their report card, like net zero emissions and green energy. They want to check those boxes, and they don't give a damn about what it means to farm that land and what it means to have generations walk in and out of your front door, 4 generations walking in and out of that front door. That's going to have a transmission line 150 feet away from it. So that's not how a free nation operates, by the way. That's how an empire falls. When you've got bureaucrats just checking boxes and not really thinking about the families who pour their souls into their land. State Representative Chris Miller, when I get to him, he's a Republican, and he's a guy who understands that government exists to serve the people. There's very few representatives who have this ideology or have this tenet that they believe that they're there to serve the people and that this is an actual public service and they're not there to get rich quick. So this project is a scam, according to Chris Miller. He says, quote, "This was an assault on property rights and on the livelihoods of Illinois farmers." And he's exactly right. The battle, it wasn't just over this wire and over energy. The fight was over whether landowners have a say in what happens on their land, and whether these green energy special interest groups can march in and treat them like roadkill, okay, and collect all the money while they're doing it, collect all the federal tax credits while they're doing it. So there was $4.9 billion in federal loans that they were going to get in order to complete this project. And Donald Trump canceled that. You canceled. You fired. Now, that's not to say that this private company isn't still going to dig its heels in and find the money elsewhere. We'll have to see, but likely not. Because, let's face it, a private company who's into green energy, it usually doesn't do all that well on its own. It usually relies on government subsidies. So Miller, the Illinois Farm Bureau, local landowner groups, they have stood their ground for years, okay? They fought in the courts over the public utility. They fought over the 2021 change to deem it a public utility. And now they finally have victory because of Donald Trump, because the Trump administration really is what I'm going to chalk this up to, and his Department of Energy. So let's not kid our folks on this one, folks. This isn't about a transmission line. It was about war on rural America. Solar farms, they are taking thousands upon thousands of acres of precious farmland. They're getting set on fire, like randomly combusting. I don't know how many stories I've done behind this microphone where I've talked about the solar farms that just combust randomly and start major fires that could cause death. Okay, now you had the Olympia High School, you had Augustana College, you've had Walmarts, farms that just go up in flames. I could say here and name like at least 20. Solar farms are dangerous. They eat up precious farmland. Wind turbines, they blink red at night, and they're like alien invaders, okay? Your electric bills are still spiking despite all of these windmills being erected, okay? And Democrats call this progress. I'm not seeing my electric bill go down anymore. I'm seeing it go up. despite there being more and more windmills, more than ever before. So really what this is about control. They want to control the energy. They want to control your land. They want to control where you live. And they're going to wrap it all up in like this soft, cutesy language called climate action. Okay. And Chris Miller, he put it bluntly. He said, quote, all you see at night are the blinking red lights. And during the day, you see tens of thousands of acres covered in solar panels taking up the best farmland God ever created. And let's be honest, is your energy bill any different? No. So the truth here is that it's not clean. It's clean. It's not green. It's not effective. And it's definitely not free. Our tax dollars are paying for those solar panels to be erected and those or windmills to be erected. So let's look at this biblically. I like to do this. Psalm 24 tells us the earth is the Lord's, not everything in it, and everything in it. So the earth is the Lord's and everything in it is the Lord's. It's not the states. It's not the DOEs, the Department of Energy. And it's definitely not Invenergy's, okay, a private company. So private property is actually a biblical concept. If you did not know that, God gives stewardship to individuals and families, not distant bureaucracies. That's why America was founded on land rights. That's why the founders, they took very seriously the defense of property. That's why they crafted the Second Amendment. The defense of property is a cornerstone of liberty. There's a reason for that because it's biblical, folks. And what happened here isn't just a political win. It is a spiritual win. It is a moral victory. And the moment when a regular rural American says, hey, this is our land, you're not going to take it, that is just something to be applauded. And this is one of those moments where Americans said, look, this is my land. You're not going to take it. This is our land. So let's wrap this up. The cancellation of the Grain Belt Express is a win for families, farmers, and for freedom. It's a loss for central planners, energy czars, globalists who thought that they could ram another scheme down your throat, down the throat of really middle America. They seem to target middle America the most with this green energy crap. And, you know, this is proof that when you show up and when you speak out and when men like Chris Miller stand firm, even Goliath can be taken down, because believe me, Invenergy is a Goliath. Okay. So, this is the America we love. This is the America I recognize, where our front porches matter. And we're not going to give federal loans to companies to obliterate our front porches. Families matter, not foreign investors. And we just got to keep fighting. We got to keep fighting this. Now, I do want to switch gears. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to talk a little bit about Donald Trump. He was asked to weigh in on the Sydney Sweeney controversy, the Great Jeans American Eagle ad. If you haven't seen it yet, you're living under a rock. But we'll talk about what he had said, because I think it's kind of funny. A little bit later in the show, you won't want to miss it. I've got this story about this armed couple. Now, they went viral, and I might need to jog your memory about who this couple is, but they were defending their homes back in 2020 from BLM protesters. They just got their gun back. Okay, so this is a huge win for Second Amendment rights. I'm going to take a look at that, but we're also going to take a look at Kamala Harris. She did this really cringy TikTok video, and she is denying that she's been drinking margaritas during this whole time, like period, after her loss in 2024. She denied drinking margaritas since the election, and she said that she's been working on a book, and now her book is out. And she did this really cringy TikTok video, and I think you guys are going to get a kick out of it. So smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'll be right back. Hey, this is Conservative Cat Clips, and this is the place where we remind you that your children come from God and they don't come from the Department of Education. The government wants to raise your kids. They want to feed them breakfast. They want to tell them about gender ideology and gender identity as young as kindergarten. They want to start them out really early. They want to tell you, your kids, how many pronouns they should have, and they want your kids to learn all the pronouns by the age of 3rd grade. Okay. Meanwhile, they can't keep bathrooms clean in their schools. They can't keep their test scores up, reading, writing, and arithmetic. They can't keep those scores above sea level. The truth here is that bureaucrats don't love their kids. They don't know their quirks, their fears, their hearts, and they certainly don't care what the Bible says about fearing or about raising them in fearing the Lord. Okay, so in Psalm 127, verse 3, children are a heritage from the Lord, not a project for the state, not a cultural science experiment. They are your responsibility, your blessing, and your mission. Okay, but what happens if you step in and they say, I'll take it from here? Okay, and what happens when you step in and say, hey, I'm actually going to take responsibility and I'm going to participate in raising my child? You show up to the school board meetings, you ask about the curriculum, you object to Drag Queen Story Hour and Drag Queen Library Story Hour and all of these pornographic books in the libraries. What happens when you say, I'm going to take it from here, I'm going to start participating in my mission and my responsibility in raising up my child? You are deemed a domestic terrorist. Okay, if you start showing up and if you actually start taking responsibility over raising your child, you are dangerous to democracy. They'll say that. And they'll say that all because you just started loving your kid enough to be involved. So we've normalized this idea that parents should just hand over their kids for 8 hours a day and play catch up over a microwave dinner and try to catch up on who your kid actually is. Your kids are strangers. That's not parenting, that's outsourcing. So the product here is a generation that is anxious, that is confused, and they are spiritually hollow. What if we flipped the script? Really, what if we turned off the screens, cracked open a Bible, and actually parented the way Deuteronomy 6 tells us to parent, at home and all of the time? And I think that our future of the country actually depends on this. And I hope that we start parenting like our future and like the future of the country depends on it, because it does. So don't be intimidated. God gave you those kids for a reason. Raise them up in truth, teach them real values, and never hand over this sacred duty to the folks who say remote learning is the way to go, or gender identity, you can identify as whatever the hell you want. Don't hand over that sacred duty of parenting and raising your children to people who are just wacky weirdos. You can raise your children, and you are required to raise your children because they are a gift from God, and He's bestowed a sacred duty on you as a parent. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, good morning. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and subscribe to the channel while you're here. Before I took the break, I was telling you a little bit about President Donald Trump. He was asked to weigh in on the whole Sydney Sweeney Great Genes American Eagle ad, and he delivered a reply that, of course, demonstrated humor and exposed it for the silliness that it deserves. And I think that I think that you're living under a rock if you haven't seen the Sydney Sweeney ad. But if you haven't, I will give you a quick recap. Sweeney, she's hot, okay, by objective standards. Okay, she's beautiful. There are objective standards to beauty. And she starred in a commercial. Okay, she dared to star in a commercial wearing form-fitting pants, loosely buttoned shirt, and she looked good while talking about her great genes. Okay, how dare she? And this ad really it looks just like pretty much every other ad prior to the wokeism, the 80s. This is like a very tame ad. It's a sex appeal ad. I'm not, like I've told you guys multiple times, into the sex appeal ads. They don't work on me. Maybe it's because I'm a Christian conservative, but I tend to buy products based on if that product is good. So For the jeans, the American Eagle jeans, I'd have to look in to see if the jeans use harmful dyes or chemicals or what kind of cotton they use or polyester or whatever they make their jeans with. That is how I would determine my purchasing of the American Eagle jeans. But this is the ad in case you missed it. Take a look.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has very genes.
Okay, so this was an ad. We can watch the whole ad. I feel like you've seen it multiple times. I do want to share with you what President Donald Trump had said about the actress star being a Republican, a registered Republican. So as a result of that ad that you just saw, the left, they went apocalyptic. They went berserk. And they suggested that was a coded message for white supremacy and that this was eugenics propaganda, whatever the hell, because that's what the left does, right? They're weird. They can't stand the thought of a beautiful woman, objectively beautiful, starring in an ad because they're insufferable people and suffer demand and miserable people demand company. They want company, so they are just relentlessly insufferable. Trump fielding questions from reporters before flying back to Washington, D.C. on Sunday evening. He was informed that Sydney Sweeney was revealed to be a registered Republican. So not a lot of people knew that, I guess. And I even came on this show and I said, I doubt she's a Republican, but maybe she did vote for Donald Trump. Take a listen to Donald Trump's response here. Here we go.
Actress Sydney Sweeney came out this weekend that she was a registered Republican. Any thoughts on that?
That who was?
Sydney Sweeney. She's like a very hot actress right now.
She's a registered Republican?
Yes.
Oh, now I love her ad. Is that right? Is Sydney Sweeney? You'd be surprised at how many people are Republicans. That's what I wouldn't have known, but I'm glad you told me that. If Sydney Sweeney is a registered Republican, I think her ad is fantastic. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. So there he was, fielding questions, and he goes, she's a registered Republican? Oh, now I love her ad. And he goes, you'd be surprised how many people are Republicans. See, I didn't think she was a Republican. She caught a lot of heat back in, I think it was like 2021, 22, I don't know. She threw a party and people said, like, and by people I mean the mainstream media hacks, they said she threw a MAGA party for her mom's 60th birthday, which was not a MAGA party. People happened to be wearing red parody hats that said make 60 great again, which is just funny. And somebody happened, a guest at that party happened to be wearing a Thin Blue Line t-shirt. And everybody said that. How dare Sydney Sweeney, yada, 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 throw MAGA party. Florida voter records show that Sweeney is a registered Republican in Monroe County since June of 2024. But think about it. The leftist outrage, this already kicked in like well before we knew she was a registered Republican, okay? Well before that fact was revealed. The hatred was already there. And really, it's just because she's a beautiful woman and she's starring in an ad and they're jealous. And how dare she have sex appeal and not rip on men like Miley Cyrus in The Wrecking Ball, and she like deep throats a hammer in her music videos, or Jojo Siwa, who says down with the patriarchy. She doesn't behave like your typical feminazi in this ad. She's just subtly beautiful, right? And she clearly knows it. How dare she? And like I said, I'm not a proponent of the ad. I like literally find myself saying that the ad's great. Although like I am traditionally not somebody for sex appeal advertisement. I think that it's tacky and it doesn't really work on me. Maybe it works on other people, but it doesn't work on me. Men or women. The Dunkin' Donuts, they came out with a man one And it didn't work right on me. It didn't make me want to go out and get a Dunkin' Refresher. Now, did I look up and see if the Dunkin' Refresher had artificial colors and dyes in it? Yes. And how much sugar was in it? Yes. I did go look up and find that out. And then I was like, okay, I'll make my decision on drinking a refresher based on this information rather than a hot guy telling me to go drink a refresher. Okay, a Dunkin' Refresher. So she's really a down-to-earth girl, though, I think. It's a shame that we have things like sex appeal ads out there in this country, but we've had them for years. They're not going away. I'm a realist. I understand sex sells. It's annoying because I would much prefer we just sell things based on, what they have in them and the materials they use and the product and what it actually is, and not use these gimmicks. But that's too much to ask for, This is really interesting because this is her TikTok, Sid's Garage. So she actually fixes up cars, which is fascinating. I don't know anything really about cars. I can change an air filter. I can do that. I can change my oil. I can change a tire. I can't really work on cars. So hats off to her. She actually has a valuable skill. Had Lizzo done the same ad, by the way, the jeans ad, there would be zero controversy right now. Lizzo, and she'd done this ad, she would be celebrated. She would be called beautiful and stunning, despite that not actually being true because there are objective standards to beauty. Sweeney, she gets drugged through the mud. Now, I want to share this with you because she's actually like a pretty cool girl. She like restores her own vintage cars, which I think is pretty neat. And it's a valuable skill to know how to work on cars. And I think she actually does know how to work on cars. She has an entire TikTok dedicated to this. It's called Sid's Garage. Take a look.
Welcome back to Sid's Garage. I'm going to be doing some maintenance on my vintage Mustang. Join me.
Like, that's pretty cool. Like, I don't care who you are. Any female who knows how her way around a car. And clearly, I mean, this was a bit of drama for the video and everything, but it seems like she knows her way around a car, at least her own. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that's pretty cool. Vice President J.D. Vance, he had a clever response to the one-sided Cindy Sweeney controversy. Let's take a listen to J.D. Vance's response. We heard Donald Trump's earlier. Here's J.D. Vance.
Yeah, my political advice to the Democrats is continue to tell everybody who thinks Sydney Sweeney is attractive is a Nazi. that appears to be their actual strategy. I mean, it actually reveals something pretty interesting about the Dems, though, which is that you have like a normal all-American beautiful girl doing like a normal jeans ad, right? They're trying to sell jeans to kids in America, and they have managed to so unhinge themselves over this thing. And it's like, you guys, did you learn nothing from the November 2024 election? Like, I actually thought that one of the lessons they might take is we're going to be less crazy. The lesson they have apparently taken is we're going to attack people as Nazis for thinking Sydney Sweeney is beautiful. Great strategy, guys. That's how you're going to win the midterm, especially young American men.
Their course correction lasted about 30 seconds.
That's right. Lasted 30 seconds. Somehow has gotten even crazier. But again, it's just so much of the Democrats is oriented around hostility to basic American life. So you have a pretty girl doing a jeans ad.
All right. So I really like what J.D. Vance says here. He says, this actually reveals something really interesting about the Dems through which you have, or interesting about the Dems, which is that you have a normal, all-American, beautiful girl who's doing normal jeans ad. Like, this is a pretty normal ad. Okay, it's not Miley Cyrus swinging on a wrecking ball or, you know, twerking or anything like that. That I would say is beyond sex appeal and just overtly feminazi and outrageous and not your normal sex appeal ad. This is a normal sex appeal ad. And he says, oh, you're selling it to kids, like teenagers. Okay, that's what JD Vance meant is, hey, they're selling it to teenage girls in America who want to look cute for the boy in high school. Okay, that is probably who this ad is targeted to. American Eagle has always targeted their ads towards teenage girls. Okay. And they've managed to unhinge themselves completely over this thing. I like what JD Vance says there because, and perhaps that's the best response to this because, really, they have unhinged themselves and they have learned nothing from 2024 is that is not normal behavior, and your approval rating is just going to keep plummeting because people are going to look at you and say, well, that's weird. And I'm going to be honest with you, people didn't vote for the Democrats in 2024 because they're just really odd ducks. Tim Walz, very weird. Kamala Harris, which we're going to get to a clip here in just a second, where she tried to participate in this viral TikTok trend and she totally epically failed. They're just odd. And they kind of give you like the heebie-jeebies. You know, if you see like somebody in the grocery store who you're like, that person looks like they have a record. I'm going to make sure that I stay away from that person. That person gives me the heebie-jeebies. Those are the Democrats. I don't know what it is, but a lot of them just give me the heebie-jeebies. So another good response would be, outside of JD Vance's, would be American Eagle's response just themselves. They essentially told the outraged mob that they can go pound sand. They said, Sydney Sweeney has great genes, is and always will be about the genes, the company said in a statement. Her genes, her story. We'll continue to celebrate everyone who wears AE jeans with confidence their way. Great genes look good on everyone. That was a pretty awesome response. I'm glad that they didn't bend the knee to the woke mob. I was afraid that they would. Now, I want to get to a few other things this morning before we wrap up the show. There was this armed couple who went viral during the 2020 BLM riots. They, of course, were defending their home from BLM protesters, and they got their guns taken away. They had to plead down to a misdemeanor, but they were politically prosecuted, which we'll get to. But this was a viral couple. They finally got their gun back, by the way. So this is a kind of a heartwarming story, definitely a win for Second Amendment rights. Kamala Harris, like I said, she delivered this really cringe TikTok, and it should be marveled, it should be studied. She denies, of course, in this TikTok, drowning her sorrows after her loss in 2024 in margaritas since the election, and she has said that she's been writing a book this entire time. And she tries to participate in like this viral TikTok trend, but she epically fails at it. So we're going to get to all of that here. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We've got a troll in the chat this morning. Go ahead, throw your chats in. I will address this one time and one time only. Trump negotiating with a convicted child trafficker. You fully support and defend child sex trafficking. Like, this is so boring and annoying. Like, look, Jeffrey Epstein, I want to see everybody brought to justice. I want to see who was actually who Jeffrey Epstein actually trafficked the humans to. Clearly, there's more people involved now. Trump, and it's not really Trump negotiating, okay? This is the Department of Justice. Pam Bondi, her deputy attorney general, is negotiating with Ghislaine Maxwell, which is something you do all of the time. Ghislaine Maxwell was a pawn in a very large human trafficking scheme and operation. And of course, they're going to be working with Ghislaine Maxwell to try to obtain information about the operation. Okay, that's not odd. That's not weird. It's not that he's negotiating with a convicted child sex trafficker. This is the DOJ, the deputy DOJ, doing his job, making sure that we have the names of the people. And we already have the names of the people, really. And a lot of lawsuits that have been fought out criminally. There was a JP Morgan top executive who was emailing back and forth with Jeffrey Epstein. There was a U.S. Virgin Islands case where they sued the JP Morgan Chase, and they sued these people over those emails. And the emails said things like back and forth to Jeffrey Epstein, this guy who was working for Chase, about how I want beauty. Sorry, I'm out of beauty. Will you take Snow White? Something to that effect. Like, clearly these were coded messages, and they were talking about women and selling women back and forth, and referring to them by Disney character names, which is really, really nasty. And I'd love to see for that stuff to come out. I think that we ultimately will. Donald Trump, and I've always taken this position, knows a lot more and has been briefed on this operation probably far more than you or me or anybody ever has. Okay. He's probably understanding that this would take down the entire banking class, taking down just one top executive. And that is, like, we already know, one top executive. He hasn't been, tried criminally for this. It was a lawsuit, and they paid out millions of dollars, Chase, after those emails, and it was a lawsuit stemming from those emails. I'd love to see them all prosecuted criminally for it, and not have them settle. Now, Trump knows something about this operation that we probably all don't, that there are a lot of people in the banking class, and I've always taken this position, that are a part of this thing. And if you take just one top executive out, everybody banks at Chase. You probably bank at Chase. I know I bank at Chase. Lots of people bank at Chase. Okay. This is a top bank. If people don't have trust in the banking class, and if they think that they're a bunch of child predators, and maybe they are, right? That is going to collapse our global economy, and people will die. So I believe that this is the decision before President Donald Trump right now. Do I take everybody out and bring down the global economy? Or do I go about this carefully and slowly and work with Ghislaine Maxwell and really bring the bad actors to justice? And I think that that's what they're going to be doing. They're not taking this seriously. And like I said, I don't even think that the DOJ has the power to unclassify or to declassify these court documents that have already been sealed. I've talked about this, how Tulsi Gabbard probably has that authority. These are court documents that not even the judge is allowed to see. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. People are calling for those court documents to be unsealed, and the DOJ has no power to do that. That would be your intelligence community would have to do that, and perhaps they're sealing it because there are members of the banking class, members of the international communities or intelligence communities that were a part of this operation. I don't know. But we just got to wait and see and be patient. And I know it's annoying, but to call Trump a pedophile is just outrageous. It's stupid. And frankly, it's just not rooted in fact. But rather fiction and TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. And I believe that you're suffering from it. You should seek help immediately. So I just, Trump, he aided the FBI in their investigation against Jeffrey Epstein. Now, why the hell would he do that if he had something to hide? Or if he was a pedophile himself. He helped take down Jeffrey Epstein. The FBI would have never gotten Jeffrey Epstein had it not been for Donald Trump. Okay, number one. Number two, Donald Trump kicked him off Mar-a-Lago. Clearly, they're not friends. Okay, clearly he wasn't a part of this operation, and he ratted Jeffrey Epstein out, essentially. All right, let's get to sorry, I went on a tangent. I shouldn't do that and let the trolls win, but it just bothers me. Like, Donald Trump clearly has a very tough decision before him, and I can appreciate this tough decision because I know what taking down the banking class. And most people probably know what taking down the banking class would mean for the global economy. It would mean a Great Depression, like a Great Depression we've never seen before. Not to say that these people shouldn't be brought to justice. I think that they will be. It's just going to take a little bit longer than we'd all like. A 5-year legal battle. Let's get to this. Involving multiple lawsuits and appeals, a St. Louis couple who brandished their firearms in an attempt to protect their property after a BLM protest swarmed outside their property. They finally successfully reclaimed their AR-15 rifle. So this couple, Mark and Patricia McCloskey, during the thick of the George Floyd riots in 2020, they decided that they needed to engage in what's called intimidation tactics, okay, which is a tactic to defend your home and can be used to defend your home. And they had to do this after a mob of protesters swarmed their home and broke open a gate. They were in a gated community, broke open a gate and marched onto their private street. Okay, so then they brandished their firearms, and of course they were labeled white supremacists and yada, yada, yada. The McCloskeys were. Now, the McCloskeys claimed that the protesters had threatened their family while chanting slogans for BLM. And guess who took part actually in that march outside of that gate? It was actually Missouri Representative Cori Bush, the Democrat. So St. Louis Circuit Attorney at the time, Kim Gardner, now write that down with a green crayon. She was Democrat. She responded to the incident by claiming that the McCloskeys had met protesters with guns and violent assault. They just brandished their firearms. Okay, folks, they hadn't, by any stretch of the imagination, assaulted any of these protesters. The couple had to eventually plead guilty to a misdemeanor charge, and they agreed to forfeit their weapons. And they were ultimately pardoned by Missouri former governor Mike Parson. He was a Republican. Now, Mr. McCloskey, he celebrated getting his gun back with a message on X. He said, "It only took 3 lawsuits, 2 trips to the Court of Appeals, 1,847 days, but I finally got my AR-15 back." Now, let me share this with you in case you guys forgot who this couple was. If you see this picture, most likely it's going to jog your memory a little bit. So there's the picture. He says that he's been reunited with his AR-15, and this was really a Second Amendment battle. He says, "We defended our home. We were persecuted by the left, smeared by the press, threatened with death, but we never backed down." So this is him and his wife. They were defending their home with really just an intimidation tactic. They were brandishing their firearms, which can be used in self-defense. There he is with his AR-15. He posed with it. Okay, that was him on the day that the BLM rioters came. This was him. Okay, in case you guys forgot who that was, wanted to jog your memory. Now, according to Fox News Digital, McCloskey also expects the pistol used by Patricia. Now, you saw that there. Here, let me show you the pistol that she was using. Okay, she had a pistol here, and she brandished a pistol. Okay, now they suspect, the McCloskeys suspect that the pistol is also going to be returned. Patricia used that pistol in the viral confrontation with the protesters. He also told the outlet Fox News Digital that the fight to get their firearms back was very expensive, but it was well worth it. He said that the gun had only been worth around $1,500 or something like that. Now it costed him a lot more time, a lot more money and effort to get it back than $1,500. But you have to let them know that you're never going to back down and you're never going to give up, and that your Second Amendment rights aren't to be trampled on. Okay, so totally worth it. Good for him. This is what he said. "Each and every one of us owns a personal responsibility for our freedom in our democratic republic." So it's a constitutional republic. That's what he said, that we all have a responsibility for our freedom. And that was very well spoken of McCloskey. And he posted a video of himself retrieving his AR-15. I want to share this with you. A total win for Second Amendment rights today. Let's take a look. Oh, sorry about that. Some tech monkeys this morning. I wanted to share that with you. I thought that was amazing. This is a win. Now, I want to point out within days of him pleading guilty. Now, this was a tweet in 2021. He pleaded guilty, obviously, to the misdemeanor charges. He had to forfeit his firearms. Within days of forfeiting his firearms, McCloskey, he quickly showed off his replacement AR-15, so he went out and replaced it. So now he's got two AR-15s. But this is a picture of him in 2021, where he legally purchased an AR-15, and he showed off his replacement. He posted a picture of himself with the firearm alongside the gun store owner, and there was another picture. I think it's in here. Let me look. With his wife. Yep, there's his wife. He posed with his wife there. Check out my new AR-15. He posted in 2021. So good for him. I mean, a win for Second Amendment rights. It's clear that the Democrat prosecutor here was engaged in complete overzealous prosecution, political prosecution of McCloskey's, and she was seeking to thrash their Second Amendment rights, making a mockery, really, of Missouri's stand your ground and castle doctrine laws. So unlike Illinois, Missouri, they have stand your ground laws. They simply brandish their firearms. This was an intimidation tactic, which is a justifiable means of self-defense, right? Brandishing your firearm, an intimidation tactic they used on the BLM protesters who invaded their private gate, went past their private gate, got onto their private street, and surrounded their home. She was obviously the prosecutor in this case. Kim Gardner, was seeking to gain political points, in my opinion, and she wanted to gain political points with specifically the racially motivated protesters. Now, Gardner, she had recently resigned, well, semi-recently, a couple of years ago now at this point, in May of 2023, amid pressure from the Missouri Attorney General. There were also legislative efforts to try to strip her of her authority. They really tried to boot her. I think it was probably because of this, but also there were allegations of mismanagement just in general. And then there was this high profile case that was completely botched. It involved a repeat offender who caused a severe accident to a teenage girl. So she had to resign ultimately in disgrace in 2023. So big win for the St. Louis couple. When I came across it this morning, I was like, aw, it takes a while, but ultimately you win and the truth comes out. And, good for the couple. They got their AR-15 back, and they had to plead guilty to misdemeanor, which was completely ridiculous. They didn't hurt anybody. They didn't assault anybody. They simply brandished their firearms as a means of self-defense against these protesters. All right, let's get to Kamala Harris. Got his gun back, but financially ruined, most likely. This looks like a very wealthy couple, so it looks like they were able to throw money at this and time. This was a wealthy neighborhood. Like, let's, make no bones about it. There was a private gate, and he even came out and said that, it took him way more money to try to get his AR-15 back than the AR-15 was even worth. Okay, and he went out and bought a replacement the next day or the following days. So obviously a wealthy couple. But, it brings a smile to my face when, you've got these wealthy couples who could probably, go out and buy an AR-15 tomorrow, and why, go through the process, the legal process, the 3 lawsuits, the 2 Court of Appeals appearances. Why go through all of that when you're wealthy and you don't really need to, right? It just goes to show you their type of character. They were willing to run themselves through the mud and rake their name over the coals, essentially to tell the government, hey, no, you can't take our firearms, or you can't thrash our Second Amendment rights. You can't do it. So it's always heartwarming when you see people who are of wealthy means taking on battles. That is always heartwarming for me, because they don't have to. So, for example, Donald Trump, he got shot in the face, okay, and he could be retiring, or he could be completely retired, sipping, Mai Tais on his golf course, and, golfing the rest of his days. He's an old man with extreme wealth, and he decided, hey, I'm going to take on this battle for the American people. And he's the president of the United States, despite multiple assassination attempts and attacks on his character. It's admirable to see people of great wealth take on battles that they don't really have to take on. They give up that comfortable lifestyle in the name of liberty, which is just the core of who Americans are, because the founding fathers, who were they? They were all men who decided in a gentleman's club, like rich people that were probably not golfing, but drinking and having a scotch and some cigars. And they got together and they said, we really don't like this tax on the damn tea. That's how it all kind of started. It started in a gentleman's club, some wealthy men. And they said, enough's enough. And they took on the fight that they really didn't have to. Because they were wealthy, and they could easily have paid the taxes on the tea and not be hurt by it or really even care. But it was more of a matter of principle. So congratulations to McCloskeys for getting their weapons back. Let's get to Kamala Harris. She's trying to convince the American people again that she's a normal human being. Her latest TikTok video is really not going to convince anybody, I don't think, that she's a normal human being. Now, she announced the upcoming release of her book titled 107 Days. Now, she decided to really promote this book through this social media trend. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of this social media trend. It's interesting. It's where like you kind of talk behind your hand like this, and like you talk off to the side. It didn't turn out well. Okay. Her trying to do the viral social media trend, it didn't turn out well. And I'll tell you why here in just a second. I'm kind of shocked that her book is actually titled 107 Days. I was kind of shocked to find that out, because there's more than, like 107 is way more than the number of fingers and toes you have. So I'm kind of shocked and impressed that Kamala Harris was able to count that high, was able to peg the number for her book title, considering that, there's that number is far greater than the number of toes and fingers you have. That aside, Kamala Harris, she posted this video, and it appears that she's taking part in this trend. It's called, and I don't know how to explain it. It's like the trend is called Who Said That? And according to Indy 100, this is meant to be humorous, and it's meant to be a way of getting out uncomfortable information. So, like, I don't think she really understands what the trend is really all about. You kind of talk off to the side, and it's like uncomfortable truth. So, I don't know. I'll have to think of like an example, but she's not doing it correctly. Like 100%, this is not a correct interpretation of the trend. Take a listen. Here we go.
Everyone thinks you've been kicking back, drinking margaritas on the beach, but really, you've been hard at work writing a book, meeting with leaders, thinking about the future of our country. Who said that? Everyone thinks you've been kicking back.
Oh, that was so cringy. So cringy. So she says, everyone thinks you've been kicking back, drinking margaritas on the beach, but really you've been hard at work writing a book, meeting with leaders, thinking about the future of our country. And then she goes, who said that? Right. So first off, good Lord. Very, very cringy. That's cringe off the charts. Second, she's no AOC. Now, this is something that I will give AOC. AOC has the ability to be relatable. She's a social media influencer. She's like a Twitch streamer, and like she's just relatable to a certain subpopulation, or like a certain subsection of our population. So she's at least relatable, AOC. Kamala Harris, she frankly makes Hillary Clinton look less stiff and unrelatable in comparison. Like this woman, Kamala Harris, is very stiff, very unrelatable. In fact, I would rather go hang out with Hillary Clinton than Kamala Harris. I think that I'd have more in common with a Hillary Clinton than Kamala Harris. Like, okay, that's the second point. She has no riz, okay, to put it, to do the kids, or to put it the way the kids say, you know, she's got no riz, no charisma. Third, the whole point of this goofy trend is that people can't see your mouth. Okay, so you're actually supposed to go like this and like not show your mouth at all. Okay, but she completely showed her mouth the whole time. She was like going like this. Like, you didn't even do the trend correctly. First of all, I saw your lips moving the entire time. Okay, that's my third point. Fourth point, the statement is supposed to be wildly bold. So I don't think she understands what the trend is supposed to be. Now, I actually saw a statistic over the weekend, which is, you know, pretty shocking stuff. And I, you know, went on a deep dive, and, you know, I've always talked about this here on Conservative Cat. Hey, I believe heterosexual relationships are the best way for children to grow up, statistically speaking. Parents with, or kids with parents in the household, a man and a woman parent who are typically married, they do better academically, socially, psychologically. They just do better overall. Now, I read this statistic, which is going to be pretty bold, pretty shocking. And most people don't like to talk about it. Homosexual men, 12% of them, and you guys can go look this up and fact check me on it. 12% of them have a problem with incontinence. Okay, you can just go look this up. I know it's really gross and sad above all else, but this is a wildly bold statement. So if I were to say that and actually hide my mouth when I say it, you know, and I want you guys to be able to hear me. Okay, so 12% of men have a problem, of gay men have a problem with incontinence and can't hold their bowel movements. Like, that's a pretty wildly bold statement. Who said that? You know, and then that's how the trend works. It's very wildly bold, and it's an uncomfortable truth. And that's kind of how the trend goes. Okay. So based on that meaning, Kamala Harris believes the fact that she is writing a book is shocking. It's supposed to be it's supposed to be a wildly bold statement that is true. Okay. And it's supposed to make people very uncomfortable. So the fact that she has the intellectual stamina to write a book, apparently we're supposed to find that shocking. She kind of like owns herself here, like makes fun of herself. Now, she clearly doesn't understand the trend, so I'm not going to say that that was her intent. But it sure looks like it, that it's an uncomfortable truth that she was able to, or that she has the intellectual stamina to write a book, and that it's shocking that she wrote a book. Okay. So in summary, she might be right about the margaritas, her not drinking margaritas, because she's always been kind of viewed as a wine mom. She actually, and most people don't know this, I talked about this during the campaign, the 2024 campaign. Kamala Harris, under an alias, would go to this wine club and purchase bottle of wines pretty regularly. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't go to the wine club, or, you know, I like Cooper's Hawk. They've got pretty good wine. I'm a big, I like wine. If I were to drink anything, wine. I like whiskey too. I don't drink all that much anymore, just because I kind of aged out of it. But I don't know about you, but anybody who goes and purchases alcohol under an alias, that raises some red flags. So she might be right about the margarita thing, because I've always seen Kamala Harris as sort of like a wine mom and a wino. And given that she purchases wine at a wine club on a regular basis under an alias, tells me that she's not really into the margs. So it's pretty apparent that the publishers of her new book would like Kamala Harris to go put herself out there and sell to consumers that she's a regular person and she's somebody that people can relate to, clearly, because this is her first promotion of the book, 107 Days, and she's doing this weird viral TikTok trend, and she didn't even really interpret the TikTok trend correctly. So clearly her publishers want her to be able to relate to the regular person and to sell them to the average consumer of the book. But it's clear that these publishers don't know who they're working with. Kamala Harris has no riz. This is the same person who says that she has an obsession with Venn diagrams and yellow school buses. Okay, so I don't think these publishers really understand what they're getting into, trying to get this woman to sell to regular people and the average person, because she cannot relate to them to save her life. Best case scenario, maybe a handful of kids on TikTok who saw this clip of Kamala Harris, found it amusing, found it hip, found it edgy. Maybe, you got some leftist kids out there, leftist college kids who thought this was edgy or funny. Most likely they're not going to buy her book, right? It's not very likely. So that's the best case scenario, is that some kids on TikTok found it funny or hip that Kamala Harris did this, but her publishers are wrong and that they think that this is going to sell this promotion. It's not. So pretending to be someone she isn't. Kamala Harris has a problem with this. She's pretending to be normal and she's not. This is not Kamala Harris's strong suit. Clearly, that's not what won her the 2024 election. And she keeps trying to convince folks that she's just this normal, middle-class person, and she's really not. And I think that couldn't be more clear, given that she code switches, which is actually where she speaks an accent of the people she's around. So she spoke a French accent around officials of France. She uses child actors to pretend to be excited in her presence. Okay, she uses child actors to get them to act and pretend like they're excited about her discussions on space and outer space. I mean, she plagiarizes Martin Luther King Jr. And at what point are we going to say, Kamala, you just got to be yourself? She's trying to be something she's not. I just wish that her publishers and she herself would evaluate and say, hey, maybe I could just be my genuine self, and I don't have to hide under this facade anymore. And I feel like she'd do much better as a politician if she were to just be her genuine self. Now, maybe her genuine self sucks, and that's why she feels like she has to hide under this facade. I don't know, because I've never really seen the genuine Kamala Harris. All right, gotta take a quick break, but we're gonna be right back. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips, where we claw through the lies and we lay out the truth. No filter, no fluff. I'm your host, Kat, and we're tackling the abortion debacle today, but this time we're pulling back the curtain on abortion's ugly, origin story. Let's talk about Margaret Sanger, founder of what would become Planned Parenthood. The left treats her like some sort of feminist hero, but they conveniently leave out where she was a eugenicist and she spoke at KKK rallies, and she wanted to, quote, weed out the unfit. Her words, not mine, folks. In a 1938 letter, Sanger wrote about her plans to target Black communities, and I quote, "We do not want the word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." Does that sound like they're trying to hide something, doesn't it? Planned Parenthood was built on this ideology, and Sanger didn't want to empower women. She wanted to control population growth, particularly among minorities, the poor, and the disabled, anyone she and her elite pals deemed less desirable. That's who she wanted to weed out. And guess what? The legacy still haunts the abortion industry today. Don't believe me? Look at the numbers. Black women make up about 13% of the population, but they account for nearly 40% of all abortions. You think that's by accident? No, ma'am. That's what's called targeted marketing and deception. They're marketing abortion to Black women. So while the media glamorizes abortion as freedom, let's be real. It started with a woman who thought freedom meant eliminating the weak. And while the left tears down statues of long dead so-called racists, they keep handing out awards named after Margaret Sanger. Hypocrisy much? The left is tearing down these statues, but yet they're handing out awards named after Margaret Sanger. Now, I know some folks are going to say, well, that was a long time ago, Kat, sure, but Planned Parenthood is still the nation's largest abortion provider. They're still planting clinics in these low-income minority neighborhoods, and they're marketing abortions to minorities. And they were raking in $500 million of taxpayer dollars, by the way, every year. And just until recently, President Donald Trump signed this executive order to end the federal taxpayer dollars to fund and promote elective abortion. The order recognizes that for nearly 5 decades, Congress enacted a little something called the Hyde Amendment. It's a series of additional laws to protect taxpayers from being forced to pay for abortion. That's what the Hyde Amendment does. Contrary to this longstanding common sense policy, the previous administration, Joe Biden, they dedicated all kinds of federal funding to elective abortion and a wide variety of government programs. This isn't about women's health. It's about politics, power, and profit. The future, it's up to us. In a post-Roe world, gives us this chance to right historic wrongs. We need laws that protect the unborn, support women, and finally shut down the lie that abortion is some kind of virtue. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. I'm Kat, reminding you that the truth has claws and history doesn't lie. Margaret Sanger's past isn't just history, it's the foundation of a system that we are fighting today. Stand tall, speak out, and choose life. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. I just came across Greg Abbott's statement, and I do want to cover that this morning. Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Earlier in the show, we talked about the Texas Democrats, being little bitches and fleeing to Chicago. But Greg Abbott, he's dropping this bombshell on Texas Democrats who fled the state. He said, you better return today or be removed and face felony charges. So Texas Governor Greg Abbott, he issued a statement warning Democrats who fled to Illinois, to Chicago, to deny a quorum for his redistricting push. Because that's what they're doing. It's redistricting, but they're also supposed to provide aid to flood victims, but they left so that way there wouldn't be quorum. And they have precisely until 3 p.m. today to return to the House to perform their duties, or they will face removal from office. So in a statement, he cites the 2021 Attorney General opinion. This is KP 0382. So this could let him petition the court to declare their seats vacant. On top of that, he's dangling the words like felony charges, alleging their fundraising efforts to cover the $500 a day in fines. So they've been given $500 a day in fines for abandoning their duties, but they've been obviously fundraising to cover the $500 a day in fines. Greg Abbott says that's a possibility, says it violates bribery laws. So here's what Texas Governor Greg Abbott wrote. He said, Real Texans don't run from a fight, but that's exactly what most of the Texas House Democrats did. Rather than do their jobs and vote on urgent legislation that affects the lives of Texans, they fled Texas to deprive the House of the quorum necessary to meet and conduct business. His statement outlines legal consequences that House Democrat members could face for breaking quorum, including the potential loss of their seats and felony violations. Wow. This is awesome. So Abbott further explains in his statement, and I talked about this earlier, that the Texas state constitution allows for such actions, by the way. You can track down and arrest House members for breaking quorum. This is obviously a statement, like his statement is trying to combat their politically motivated stunt here. And he says in the statement, this truancy ends now. So he goes further. The derelict Democrat House members must return to Texas and be in attendance for when the House reconvenes at 3 p.m., no later August 4th, 2025. For any member who fails to do so, I will invoke the Texas Attorney General Opinion Number KP 0382 to remove the missing Democrats from membership in the House, Texas House. Wow, this is kind of shocking stuff. Good for him, though. So the opinion he's citing here provides a legal framework and suggesting that intentional prolonged absences to break quorum could constitute abandonment. So there is a legal definition of abandonment, which creates a vacancy, and then the governor could fill their seat via appointment, which would be awesome because there's like 33 Democrats that left. There's 64 Democrats overall. The process in reality would involve, of course, legal proceedings, and it would be pretty lengthy, and it would depend on if the courts agree that this abandonment definition has been reached, or that this interpretation has been reached. So Abbott's statement, totally right move here. Let's see if they have the teeth to follow through on it. I hope that they do. This is the first step into punishing these cowards, these cowardly Democrats. Now, they have been having to pay the $500 per day in fines. So they have been paying this, and it really hasn't really compelled them much to return to Texas from Chicago. They fled to Chicago, and they're supposed to be, having a little powwow with Governor J.B. Pritzker. He's supposed to be meeting with the Texas Democrats. They're going to get a crash course on corruption. But anyway, they haven't really been compelled to return because of the $500 fee, because what they do, they find these left-wing donors who will just slip them money under the table and pay off those debts. So they're not really concerned about the fee. And I love how Abbott addresses that. And this is where the felony violations come in. So he says that tactic, having left-wing donors pay your $500 fee, he suggests that soliciting funds to evade the fines as a means to abandon their legislative duties could violate bribery laws. That's crazy. He goes, I will use my full extradition authority to demand the return to Texas of any potential out-of-state felons. Whoa. So you can use, if they are committing felony bribery, you can use extradition authority as the governor and bring them back to the state of Texas. Abbott made, of course, similar threats, and we talked about this earlier in the show, how this happened in 2021 with the Texas Dems. They went to Washington, D.C. on a private jet. They all wound up getting like COVID, which was really funny. But they were protesting or breaking quorum for this vote about election integrity laws, so like voter ID laws and things like that. It was a political stunt. They pulled pretty much an identical stunt back in 2021. And this is a little bit different, though, because he gave a specific deadline. He cited legal opinions, and he's kind of upping the ante here, Greg Abbott, than what he did in 2021. So will he actually pull the trigger? That is yet to be seen. State lawmakers at the time in 2021, which included Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat from Texas, called Abbott's bluff with Republicans seemingly unwilling to support the nuclear option. The childless truants would eventually return after fleeing the state for 38 days. So they eventually came back in 2021 after 38 days. Ken Paxton, he's a Republican. He's the attorney general in Texas. He threatened arrest of any Democrats who simply tried to leave the state to prevent a vote on redistricting. So they're preventing the vote on redistricting. Here's what he said on X. He says, quote, if Democrats ignore their duty to their constituents by breaking quorum, they should be found and arrested no matter where they go. My office stands ready to assist local, state, and federal authorities in hunting and compelling the attendance of anyone who abandons their office and their constituents for cheap political theater. Yeah, for TikToks on the plane, okay? So Abbott and Paxton, they are indeed invoking a tone here that we did not see in 2021. There was, a similar statement, similar threats made back in 2021 that they could be arrested, yada, yada. But there's definitely more teeth, I think, to this statement because they cite opinions. They give them a specific deadline. These childish lawmakers, they eventually did return after 38 days. They were, at the time, Republicans, they were unwilling to go nuclear. Now, I don't know where Republicans are at in Texas right now, but I hope that they're willing to go nuclear. And, with the whole redistricting thing, I would think that they would be willing to do it this time to go nuclear and start arresting people because they're fighting fire with this whole gerrymandering thing. Okay. New York, Illinois, California, they've been gerrymandering for decades. And Texas is finally saying enough's enough. We're going to add some Republican seats because Illinois has made it pretty much impossible for Republican congressional districts to be a thing. Okay, we only have 3 of them. There's 14 out of the 17 that are all Democrats. So they're invoking a tone here that they're not playing games, Paxton and Abbott. And it seems reasonable that any lawmaker who refuses to do their job, that they would be subject to removal or have some sort of penalty for not doing their job, right? They're paid to do a job that they were swore, to do, right? This only makes natural sense that they'd be held accountable for not doing their job. You can't have Democrats stomping their feet every single time a controversial vote comes up. You have to lose with grace, okay? Even if you don't like the vote that comes up and you're going to lose, you can't keep getting away with this. It's just a matter of time before their colleagues in other states start doing the same thing over and over again. And then we don't have democracy anymore, where we have debate, where we, vote, and then somebody loses the vote, okay? That is true democracy. These people, they say they're fighters of democracy, but really they're fleeing from democracy. And as you do with any unruly child or child that's throwing a tantrum, there has to be consequences to your poor behavior. Otherwise, they will never learn. And in the end, this stunt is about attention. It's about narcissism. And quite frankly, it's embarrassing. Okay. And Abbott needs to bring the full weight of the law down on these people, down on anyone who tries to play these games, because our democracy is at stake. All right, folks, I appreciate you being here. Let me get to some of your comments. Texas Republicans are real men and women. They will go nuclear. I sure hope so. They didn't go nuclear in 2021. They gave the Democrats 38 days. Like, think about that. That's like nearly 40 days where the Democrats got to play stompy foot. I really hope that they don't go a whole 38 days and they actually stick to this deadline here that is at 3:00 today. I hope that they go nuclear. Yes. I appreciate you guys being here. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. We will be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Bye-bye. Love you so much.